that matter most to you. Joining us today is 2nd Ward Commissioner Milinda Ysasi. But first, let's go over some of the latest updates from around Grand Rapids. A fireworks reminder for Grand Rapids residents. As we move into summer, the city is reminding residents to follow fireworks safety rules. Under the local ordinance, consumer-grade fireworks are only allowed during certain days and times. The next legal dates are June 19 and June 29 through July 4 from 11 a.m. to 11:45 p.m. Violating the ordinance could cost you a $1,000 fine per offense. To keep things safe and neighborly, be sure to check the city's rules before lighting up the sky. The Grand Rapids City Commission has adopted a $735 million budget for fiscal year 2026, continuing major investments in core services, city infrastructure, and community priorities. The budget includes a 6.5% increase from last year with a general operating fund of $196 million. The city's property tax rate will slightly decrease to 8.9 mils. Key investments include $189 million in capital projects like vital streets and park improvements, 22 new staff positions across departments, and expanded public safety resources, including a new fire inspector, extra police academy class, and more 911 dispatchers. The budget also adds funding for economic inclusion initiatives, continued work on the city zoning and master plans, and boosts to water system operations and street lighting. Several late adjustments brought the final total to $735.5 million and added roles like a policy specialist for sustainable buildings and 2 justice analysts. Kent County Prosecutor Chris Becker announced last month that former Grand Rapids police officer Christopher Schur will not face a second trial for the 2022 killing of Patrick Lyoya. The first trial ended in a mistrial after jurors couldn't reach a unanimous verdict. Becker cited post-trial interviews indicating that most jurors favored acquittal, leading him to conclude that a retrial would likely yield the same results. The decision sparked immediate protests outside the Kent County Courthouse. Community leaders, including Kent County Commissioner Robert Womack, criticized the lack of accountability and called for systemic reforms. In response to Becker's decision in this trial and in response to a federal judge's dismissal of all charges against Michigan State Police Officer Brian Keeley in the Samuel Sterling case, Womack is launching a series of town halls called State of Emergency, centered around community and policing issues. The first of the town hall series is tonight, Monday, June 2 at 6 p.m. at Wealthy Theater. The Grand Rapids Fire Department has once again secured the coveted Insurance Services Office Class 1 Public Protection classification, reaffirming its status as the only fire department in Michigan to hold this top-tier rating. This distinction places GRFD among the elite 2% of fire departments nationwide, with only 502 out of over 27,000 departments achieving this level. The ISO evaluates departments based on emergency communication, fire operations, water supply, and community risk reduction efforts. The Rapid has launched Route 1000, a new weekend bus route serving the west side of Grand Rapids. The route runs from Rapid Central Station to Millennium Park with 36 stops along the way. And this marks the first time since 2005 that the Rapid is offering service to Millennium Park. Summer is officially here. Not officially, it's the beginning of June though, and Grand Rapids is celebrating. The city kicks off this weekend with the city's 175th birthday bash. It is a community-wide celebration with family activities, live music, and more. Then on June 12, Grand Rapids Sister Cities International will host its annual summer solstice fundraiser at DeVos Place. The Grand Rapids Asian Pacific Festival returns to Calder Plaza June 13 through 15, offering a weekend filled with Asian and Pacific Islander cuisine, music, dance, and family-friendly activities. On June 19, the city marks Juneteenth with the 5th annual Juneteenth Jam, also at Calder Plaza. This free event features live performances, Black-owned vendors, and art showcases honoring Black culture and history. Then on June 21 through the 22nd, the Grand Rapids Pride Festival takes over downtown for 2 days of live music, drag shows, food trucks, and community celebration. Admission is free with donations supporting the Grand Rapids Pride Center. That's it for city updates. When we come back from the break, we will be joined by 2nd Ward Commissioner Milinda Ysasi.
For over 30 years after humble beginnings as a public access TV station, the Community Media Center has grown to be an active, multi-platform media and technology assistance organization, encouraging and enabling our community to push their creative boundaries. We power a variety of resources, including a music-centered community radio station, WYCE, a community venue with stage and screen at Wealthy Theater, citizen-driven journalism with the Rapidian, a web development team empowering local nonprofits, an education department that trains and broadens students' minds, and a free speech public access television studio, GRTV, where it all began. By introducing audiences to new voices and ideas, we enhance community engagement and create connections between artists and audiences, enriching our city's cultural offerings. We empower and collaborate with platforms and resources accessible to all and used by all. Every free democratic society depends on media, accessible to the community and uncensored by government. The Community Media Center continues this work for the media landscape of today and tomorrow. These platforms and services empower our neighbors to tell their stories and explore the richness of culture that Grand Rapids has to offer. Connect, discover, learn, create, and share. The Grand Rapids Community Media Center.
Welcome back to City Connection. I'm your host, Allison Donahue, joined by 2nd Ward Commissioner Milinda Ysasi to continue the conversation. Welcome back to City Connection. Thank you for coming on again to bring in the summer with us here on
It feels good outside
GRTV.
right now. Yeah.
I know, I'm excited. I got to shed my sweater though before I step out there. You are the 2nd Ward Commissioner, so that means you are serving, or representing really, everything. You're probably better.
Yeah,
Thank you.
the northeast part of the city. No problem. The 2nd Ward is really that north-south boundary is Wealthy Street. They're gonna go up all the way up to the northern part of the city, like 4 Mile area. There's some annexation up there. The river is the west boundary, and then East Grand Rapids Township. So, yeah.
Great. Yeah, and you serve the entire city of Grand Rapids, but represent.
Yeah, I think that's a really good way to think about it. You know, the mayor is the only person who's elected at large, so everybody in the city can vote for the mayor. And then only the people in the 2nd Ward voted for myself and my colleague, Commissioner Lisa Knight. But really, I think to make sure that we have a strong city, we have to care about what's going on in our ward, but also be able to help and support and connect to our friends in the other wards. And people just travel in between the city so much. Like today I'm in the 1st Ward, I was in the 3rd Ward, and I'll go home to the 2nd Ward tonight.
Yeah, absolutely. Cool. Well, I have a ton of questions, mostly about Second Ward today.
Great.
So if there's Second Ward listeners, today's your lucky day.
My husband already wrote me and said, hey, you're going to be on the show today. I think he has a Google alert on me. But
Great.
anyways, he's a constituent too.
Perfect. So something exciting this weekend is the Creston Farmers Market opens this weekend, has a new location, the West Lot at 123 Caledonia Street Northeast. And last month, Fulton Street Farmers Market opened up. Both of those are in your ward.
Yes.
What's the biggest difference between these two markets and how do they serve their neighborhoods differently?
Absolutely. Well, I think in the city of Grand Rapids, we have this great history of farmers markets, certainly Fulton Street Market. I mean, growing up, you just think about, going there and it was kind of a cool place to hang out. We have other ones throughout the city too, like Cesare Chavez Farmers Market. You have just people who are wanting to stay really connected into their community. And a lot of these things have also been supported by the Neighborhood Match Grant Fund, which is through the city for individuals to do something in their neighborhood. They can utilize some dollars to do that. But I think Creston really wanted to see that. I know later in the segment we'll talk about businesses opening and closing in Creston. And farmers markets are a really great way that people can sort of test out their business. They can see, like, do we have an audience? What is the desire? And last year, for the first year of the farmers market, it used to be La Azteca, which is now Iker's Tacos. They're now on Coit in Creston, in the Creston neighborhood. But they were without a location for, I think, maybe about 9 months. And they were selling tamales and other things at the farmer's market. And I never got one because people were lined up, burritos. And so I think it's a way to make business ownership and entrepreneurship more accessible. And I think, just for some people, they want that ability to be able to walk to the farmer's market. So it's that business incubation. It's also that hyper-local neighborhood environment. And I think it's just, honestly, a lot of neighbors coming together and saying, like, I'm willing to do this. I know there is a new manager of the Creston Farmers Market, and I don't remember their name, but I will be there at 9:30 on Saturday for the ribbon cutting.
Cool. Great. Another big thing happening in the Second Ward back in April, almost $10 million went into this project, a $9.8 million construction project launched at Canal Park on Monroe. Can you give us an update on where this is and what folks can expect?
Absolutely. So this, that was April. It's hard to believe that we're in June, but Commissioner Knight and I were able to be there along with the mayor, other city officials. Ron Yob of the Ottawa Band of Indians was there, and we're able to really, Mayor Bliss was there just because of her work, because half of the funding will come from the Evergreen Parks Millage, which she certainly led those efforts. But we're able to be there for that groundbreaking, and I think the most exciting things are going to be that direct kayak access, although I probably won't go on it, but I'll wave to people who are on it. We're going to have this new playground set. I mean, the playground set is great, but really Ron and others helping to inform just kind of like the uses of the land and how to better be like even better stewards of the land that we're on, and a recognition of who is here. We're celebrating 175 years, multiple 175 years ago. It's just going to be more accessible. There's so many businesses down there that have really rallied around. It's because it's a closing, even though it's not a road construction. There's a lot of fencing that is going around that area. City Build, Field and Fire, a lot of businesses down there. They oftentimes activate those spaces, but I'm happy to see that City Build is activating the side of their building because they're going to lose that for the summertime. It's about an 18-month project. So there's already, I don't know the official words of the construction language, but they're already doing a lot of that. It's fenced off, there's digging, I think they're going to try to do it in pieces and parts so that we can open certain parts of it open. Linear is right there on the river. And so, it's kind of dealing with that construction for something greater in 18 months. But, we get 4 seasons in Michigan. And so I know people are anxious to be out there. But I think it's just going to be even more activation. DGRI has done a ton of activations, Lions and Rabbits, just thinking about the things that have happened at Canal Park. So it's going to just even be more connectivity, especially as we think about even going further north in the Second Ward.
Great. And we have lots of other parks to visit in the meantime.
Absolutely.
Creston has seen a wave of business changes with Saugatuck Brewing closing and now Fika Cafe opening. From your perspective, what's next for Creston's business landscape?
So I have the honor of serving on the Corridor Improvement District, which is the tax increment financing authority, and almost like all of our neighborhoods, our wards have these. And ours was one of the newer ones, but it's been growing steadily. And so this is the taxing that those businesses do in that commercial area. And we just got done doing a review of really our branding identity, because we're the North Corridor Improvement Authority. We're on Plainfield. We're in the Creston neighborhood. We have an Instagram page that's called Best in Creston. And so it can be confusing. And so what we've heard from the business owners over there was like, can we create one singular identity? Last year, I think we had 8 businesses that received one of the Best of the West in the Review magazine, and that was a really big deal. And we took out, the business owners decided to take out the billboards to highlight that, to really bring people into that Creston Plainfield neighborhood corridor. So I think one is going to be identifying what is that brand, what do we want to see. We have the Creston Business Association there. We also have the Cheshire Business District. And so how do we kind of mirror and put all these together? We have people who are coming in every single day taking their kids to City High Middle. And so I keep thinking about, like, how do we keep those folks who are doing the drop off or the pickup and have them go to the businesses in the corridor? It's just a great, I think, kind of story that we could have. And I know there are people there because they're like, I'm at Lucy's and I work over here in Elger Heights, but I'm doing a drop off. So that brand identity is going to be key. I think we've seen the neighborhood association, others, again, using that example of Iker's Tacos, rally around a business that may have been displaced, helping individuals, different commercial real estate individuals, just trying to identify spaces that make sense.
What do you think makes this business district different than like Uptown or Easttown?
Yeah, I think for,
Downtown.
I think, of course, you can go up and down Wealthy, and there's absolutely the residential pieces there. I think we're just such a bigger area, and so, Creston is the largest neighborhood association. We like to say that. I'm a Creston neighbor. I live in Creston Heights, and so I think, that large geographic area can maybe make you feel a little disconnected. So I think we have the opportunity to maybe mirror Uptown a little bit with the different neighborhoods. If we say, we've got our Creston Business Association, we've got the Cheshire area, and then as we get even closer to, Division and Leonard, we've got, a Choo Choo Grill is still there. It hasn't been sold yet, and they have really good milkshakes. So just really trying to make sure that people understand kind of what this area can represent. I know for many of us, we'd love to see more arts and entertainment in the district, staying open later. That's what we consistently hear. We have a lot of people who are coming from like Plainfield Township area. People are going into Corwell Health area. There's going to be an abundance, and so how do we support people who are coming into, work and then maybe go back home? So I know that's definitely on the identity pieces. We were able to host it at a business called Nourish Kitchen. They are a meal prep food, food prep organization. And James, the owner, the food was really great. He does these pop-ups on Thursdays and Fridays. And so I think it's also redefining that in Creston. It might not be these very standing every single day, like you're going to be able to go to this place in Uptown, but it may be more of that connecting and communicating pop-up style for now.
Pop-ups are big right now, I think. There's a wave of that happening.
He's got a good menu, so they should go check it out at Nourish Kitchen.
You've also worked on crafting the Creston area specific plan, so you're pretty familiar with all of this. Can you talk to us about what that is and what the process looks like?
So I have to give credit to my predecessor, Ruth Kelly. So she was a big proponent, and Mayor Bliss too, of making sure that Creston did have an area-specific plan. It's another planning tool like the master plan process, and before the master plan process, we were going to do it separate, but there was a lot of advantages to doing it inside the master planning process, which took us a little bit longer because of COVID. But typically you want these kind of tools from a kind of nuts and bolts thing is to help to support things like if you're going for low income tax credit dollars, maybe from MISHDA, you present a better application to be able to receive incentives. And so without that area specific plan, there were many who felt like, gosh, we weren't seeing the housing boom in the Creston neighborhood. But now we've got, a number of different projects that have come up, the Quimby and others that are, just have added quite a few different rental units in the Creston neighborhood. But this is really informed by certainly businesses, but also neighbors who live in the corridor. And I think, we heard a variety of pieces. Creston is we want to keep it funky, and I think you have that in the notes to talk about. We can talk about what does it mean to be funky, but as also being this like corridor and connector into that next, like who is out in that Plainfield Township area or further north, and that is like a gateway into the city. So we see ourselves as that. Yeah.
Great, yeah, like that placemaking. Neighborhoods are a big part of that. That was one of the major goals that were outlined. That lively and unique neighborhood, keep Creston funky. So how do you balance like a neighborhood's character and business development? Because I know that's a big thing happening in the neighborhood.
Yeah. I think it is recognizing that there is like the symbiotic nature that has to occur, right? I mean, first and foremost, when you have people, the people who are in your neighborhood are most likely to be your probably constant, customers. And so I think about Alan Hartline at Kingma's, he's made lots of different investments in that property. I mean, it is, it was this shop that people came from all over. He just did a zip code study, and he's like noted just the variety of zip codes. Like people are coming from all over the city and the outer of the city to come into that market because of some of the products. He's done a really strong focus on Michigan-made products and small businesses, right? So again, I think it's that desire for that localized or hyper-local experience. So I think he's recognized, but he's also like, my customers are also in my backyard, and I want to be good stewards to them. One of the things that he called a couple weeks ago, and he's like, the bike rack is like fallen down, like somebody ran into it, like how do I get this set up, was going to support, the cement being poured. And so I think that's what you see with a lot of the business owners in that Creston neighborhood is like, how can they be stewards, like Transfigure, they put outside like, a coat and clothing rack that people can just come and take from, and just recognize it might be hard for people to say that they need something. I thought that was something that was really mindful. So I think that you have to balance those pieces, and you also have to say, as a growing city, and we know that we need 17,000 units by 2027 or 15,000, I can't remember off the top of my head, that means more density, and we do live in a city. And so I think that there are some people who may not want that, but that still is really the goal of the city, is to create more housing at different price points, at different types, and we're seeing a lot of exciting projects come along with our emerging developer grant, and then I know we'll talk about the land bank later too.
Yeah, another one of the goals was safer streets for walking and biking. Do you know if there's any movement there in the Creston neighborhood for bike lanes or?
Right now, I don't have anything specific as it relates to the Plainfield corridor. One of the things that we've really tried to focus on there was just the safety of, particularly as it related to the school. We have so many kids who are leaving City High and Middle, getting on buses, parents are picking them up, and so making sure that we have those bioretention islands that have been there for some times, but those are those street designs that can help to reduce traffic. I think that it's also a balance of, I saw like a pedestrian as I was going down Elder Street earlier today that kind of just like put their hand out almost as like a biking thing to be like, hey, I want to cross. I think it's like we have to create this culture more forms of mobility. I know, Mayor LeGrand is really focused on that. I often see him riding his bike around town. My husband rides his bike. And so I think that for the Plainfield corridor is also looking at another blinking crossing a little bit closer to the Leonard and Division area. Yeah.
Zooming out just a bit, what are some of the biggest issues that you're hearing from residents about the second ward?
Yeah. Gosh, I just got a call too from somebody today that said, what are the burning issues in the second ward? And I think that, you talked about some things at the top of the program about some real things in the city that people have called and have questions on. So whether it be related to the mistrial and the decision not to try Christopher Scher, that certainly has been calls, and just learning more about what is that jury process. I learned from a friend who also sits on a city board that there is a jury review committee that exists at the county level that looks at sort of, who is in the jury pool on a county level, and just making sure that we get more people involved in that process. That was something that I learned, because people were saying, like, how is this jury picked, and why isn't this reflective of Grand Rapids? And because it was at that circuit court level, it's reflective of Kent County, right? Not just Grand Rapids. So I think that was something I knew, but explaining that to others, I think, was really important. I think, just the realities, the mayor did a mayor's minute on federal funding and what does that look like for all of us. So I think I get a lot of calls from people who are concerned about, their health care or their parents' health care, what's going to happen, teachers who are concerned about their students and their access to healthy foods. And so while those are things that we don't individually control, we do spend a lot of time talking to our legislators at the state and federal level and letting them know what cuts would look like to a city like Grand Rapids and really hopefully thinking about it across the state and the country. So that's on that very federal high level, which just the world that we're living in is calls that I'm getting. And then I would say, traffic safety is always a big one. I think there was a pedestrian that was seriously injured on Lake Michigan Drive over the weekend. And so just continuing to, engage in different behavioral economics so people can be safer on our streets.
Great. And you sit on the Grand Rapids Land Bank Authority. Do you have any updates on the city's land bank?
Sure. So right now our Land Bank Authority is technically under our Brownfield Economic Development Board. And so we just met last week. We are getting ready to bring forth what's called our Intergovernmental Agency Agreement to City Commission on June 10th, where we'll vote on that to essentially transition it to a separate body. All 107 or 106, and I can't remember, properties have been moved forward to our ownership. And then at the last authority meeting, we were able to highlight a couple different emerging developers who were, when those properties were under the State Land Bank Authority, they were able to take control, and we were able to see some of the progress that they have. One was for a housing development in the first ward. So Doug Booth in the city's Economic Development Department has been leading that effort. We now have a logo and an identity, and you can go online and search for the different properties. About 60 of the properties are not buildable due to just like environmental conditions. And then I think what the mayor is really focused on is like, how do we acquire more properties? How do we identify other funding sources to support the land bank? It's not the be-all, end-all, but it's going to be an important tool as it relates to affordable housing, but also as hopefully an economic development tool for people who want to get in the development game in the city.
How unique is it for a city our size to have a land bank?
It was unique enough that we needed to have new legislation in the state. So Representative Christian Grant sponsored legislation now 18 months ago, and then was passed last year, that cities of 200,000 or more of our size were able to have land banks. And so, previously Kent County had a land bank that was dissolved before my time on city commission. I think that was probably in 2018, 2017. Now I can't quite remember. And so just working closely with the state land bank, they were very helpful and supportive. And quite honestly, I think it's we just had a economic development session where Doug Booth presented to city staffers so that other departments, right? So maybe it's a different part of planning, or it's somebody in compliance. Just the more that people know about what are we doing as a land bank, then that's an interaction that a city staffer has with somebody else in the community, and then also with our corridor improvement authorities, so that they can talk directly to businesses about what we're doing there.
Yeah, great. Well, I believe it is just about time for us to take another break.
Okay.
So when we return, we will be answering questions from viewers like you. To take part in the conversation, send in a question to cityconnection@grcmc.org or submit a question through the Rapidian's Instagram story @The Rapidian. Welcome back to City Connection. It's June 2, 2025, and we're joined by 2nd Ward Commissioner Milinda Ysasi. During this part of the show, we will be taking questions from viewers, starting with some questions from Reddit. This question says, I want more frequent public transit with dedicated lanes. How and how often do city government staff and officials communicate funding desires of residents at the state level?
Yeah. Well, I think this is a constant question we have. As a reminder to everyone, we're part of the interurban authority with the Rapid, and so we are one of 6 communities that pay into supporting the Rapid and the connectivity of our bus system. I did see a recent gubernatorial candidate talking about a high-speed train between Grand Rapids and Lansing and Detroit. I would support that because I have been traveling a lot to Detroit. And so one of the things, the mayor does sit on the Rapid board, as well as our city manager connects with the CEO, Deb Prado, of the Rapid board as well, to let individuals know. Jeff King, who's their community engagement manager, I know has been very actively engaged, talking to different neighborhood groups about just like what are the needs. And so what we hear is like more desire for frequency. I think that was back in the day why we made that investment in the downtown area shuttle system, because we knew that people wanted to get around faster to downtown, and we wanted more people to be engaged, whether it was at restaurants or shops or going to different activities. So how often that gets communicated is probably monthly when we have that Rapid board meeting. But I would say our mobile GR director, Jessica Smith, she is in regular communication with the Rapid since they're the ones who are operating the Dash shuttle for us. So I would say very common answer. I don't have anything specific like we're gonna change the times to every 10 minutes. A lot of it has to do with availability to purchase the different vehicles, which a focus that has been the focus of the Rapid, as well as drivers. Just the ability to find people who are going to drive these large buses, which I think those types of jobs have been harder to recruit for, at least is what I've heard from the Rapid.
So it's more of a local decision here with the Rapid than it would be like sending it over to the state officials.
I mean, the state could definitely make some investments, say, other infrastructure projects like fixing the roads and things like that. They could decide to say, we're going to identify this much into, supporting public transportation. Right now, I am, again, I'm not in Lansing every single day, but of course, the budgeting process for the state budget is going on, and Speaker of the House has stated pretty clearly, very much focused on a roads package and what are the changes there. And so we're actually seeing cuts to probably some of those investments and some of those things like this year. I know you guys have highlighted our RAP projects or the Rapid Placemaking projects through the MEDC. There's currently no funding for that in this, in this potential budget, which is still very draft. But we're seeing some of those things that have come to city sort of go away. But it doesn't hurt to reach out to your state legislator.
Right. While they're building that budget.
Yes.
With another question from Reddit, with the highly noticed street racing that took place throughout the city Saturday and Sunday, why is JRPD not being held accountable for their lack of enforcement of public safety laws?
I would, I think, and I gotta say, my husband's always on Reddit too, telling me what's going on. So I know there's a lot of commentary on there. I would say I don't think that it's not holding individuals accountable. I do think what happens is these things happen very quickly and very fast. The other day, my husband and I were at the corner of College and Leonard, and this car just kind of went in the middle when we had the green light and was just doing like the donut sort of thing. I don't know if it's donuts when it's not snowing, but anyways, it was doing donuts. And so I think these things happen sort of spontaneously. I will say, I know the police department regularly uses things like social media to sort of, identify what might be going on in the city. And so a lot of these things are shared via social media channels, but I also know some of them can be very spontaneous. But, we saw this at the shooting one of the shootings that occurred this past weekend was at the now I can't remember Center Point Mall area. So it's typically these areas where large gatherings, I guess would occur because there's a lot of parking, but we've also seen it on Monroe Street as well. And so, I think the best thing that individuals can do is if they do see something is to call, depending on what's going on, it could be the emergency line or the non-emergency line. It just depends. I could see it and being in a situation where I might call one or the other. And then we become more aware of it. So last year there were some things on the Blue Bridge that was more individuals versus cars, but they definitely do know some of the spots, and I know that they probably would. I don't know at what level of the social media, but I can find out a lot on social media, so I'm sure they could probably find out more than I can as well.
Yeah, the subreddit for Grand Rapids is an easy place to find
Yes,
things.
absolutely.
Another question coming from that subreddit.
Sure.
What are you doing specifically to prevent another murder like that of Patrick Lyoya? Why have you never reintroduced a way to allow the police budget to be lowered as you tried to do in 2020? If it was worth trying to do then, what has changed to make it not worth doing now?
Yeah. Well, thanks for this question. I mean, this is my 6th year on commission. In 2020, I think we were in a moment of time of a lot of things occurring, and then unfortunately around, racial unrest related to exchanges with police at a national level. And I've shared my own personal stories of myself and other family members, and I've also shared stories of police being very, very there. Some people know my husband was assaulted randomly here on the west side, and it was truly random, and it was a lot of these systems coming together. And so I would say, for me, I haven't presented anything like that because I have been supportive of the way the department is going, as well as the work of the city manager, first and foremost, putting more dollars as it relates to our co-response model. So really working alongside social workers with Network 180 to make sure that if a call can be addressed with a mental health professional alongside a public safety officer, that is really a much better spot for us to be in. So that is something that we have worked towards. I think we'd love to get the 24/7 coverage, and some of that just has to do with some of our staffing levels on the police department, which we are almost to the full staffing level, which is I think about 306. I can't remember now. But I think Chief Winstrom has done a good job to identify getting to that amount would also lead us into community public safety officers, which is something that I hear continuously throughout my ward. Why don't we have that? We used to have that. People knew us. And, I think it is, again, this balance. Somebody once said to me, I want to see a police officer coming into my neighborhood because they're going to an event or doing something good versus stopping somebody or, for some sort of activity. And then thirdly, I would say is because shortly after, so Patrick Lyoya was killed on April 3rd, 2022. On July 26th of 2022, Chief Winstrom, after only being on the job for a few months, sat in front of our whole commission body and shared the number of things that he was working on, which it was looking at the co-response model, using technology in ways that would be more effective in sort of searches like this. So you see our investment in the drone pieces. Some people were upset about that. I was supportive of it because then if we had control of the drone, we have control of the technology and the data and how it gets used, versus if we go to the Michigan State Police, we're going to have to be confined to what their rules are and their regulations, and we wanted to have it fall under our Office of Accountability and Public Safety. I also think that we've tried to work closely with Prosecutor Becker to recognize why are crimes happening, being committed by individuals who are young, 11 and 12 years old. We saw a rush in the Kia break-ins in 21 and 20, and so really working with GRPS, the prosecutor's office, investing in new programs. A gentleman, Pastor Gaddy at Pilgrim Rest Church, is focused on a program for young individuals. It was 15 weeks and now 26 weeks. So I think for me, it's been really looking at why are these things happening, particularly with young people. And I think it's because sometimes there is a lot of uncertainty in their home life, and for a variety of reasons. People working multiple jobs, feeling disconnected. I think to be a young person in this world right now is probably a really hard thing. There's a lot of uncertainty. From age 11 to 26, I don't know that I'd want to be a young person right now if that was the opportunity to me. So I think my job as a commissioner is to, continue to ask those questions. So I asked a question at the last commission, or 2 commission meetings ago, related to a protester following, I think, one of the days of court following the Christopher Scher trial around an individual who was in a wheelchair, who is differently abled. And, just asking the question about, what has been our experience? How are we trained? Because my understanding is that an individual who is using a wheelchair, that is an extension of their body. So how are we trained in that environment? So I'll continue to ask those questions and to make sure that we're recognizing like not everybody shows up in the same way.
Great, thank you for that answer.
Yeah.
It's time for us to take another
Okay.
break.
Who's next?
When we return, we'll be taking more questions from the public.
Thanks.
It's morning in Grand Rapids. Do you know what's going on in your city? Stay informed about what's happening in your community with The Rapidian, your source for hyperlocal news and information. The Rapidian is a community-focused news source powered by local residents like you. Our volunteer writers and reporters create content that hits close to home about topics like local government, business, schools, events, and people. The Rapidian goes beyond the headlines to provide in-depth coverage of issues that affect Grand Rapids directly, so you can stay in the know. We aim to uplift the community by sharing positive, inspiring stories of growth, progress, and neighborhood pride. The Rapidian is your neighborhood newspaper for the digital age. Follow us on our website and social media to stay connected to your community. This is The Rapidian.
Welcome back to City Connection. We're joined here by 2nd Ward Commissioner Milinda Ysasi, taking questions from the public. We have more questions coming from Reddit. This one says, it may be right on the border of the 2nd and 3rd wards, but what is being done to address the intense need, both current and anticipated, for parking in businesses to support the incoming soccer stadium and amphitheater, and to safely manage the assumption that all venues will eventually have events on the same night?
Yeah. No, this is a great question. I think it's one that no matter what ward you're in, we do need to think about it because it's going to be, these regional assets. But there's real questions that we have, and I think, parking has certainly been one of them. When I think about the off-ramp, if I'm heading south on 131 and I get off at Market, there's a lot of questions about which way the traffic will flow, and so I think those are absolutely pieces that get included with the different intervals as it relates to our planning department. So things like looking at the sound and amplification, there's certain testing that happens at different intervals. Yes, there was our parking study that was done in conjunction with Grand Valley State University and looking at the variety of assets throughout the entire city. I think for us, it's really making sure we have more of those investments and like, what could the dash look like on these nights? I don't know what that probability of it is to be on the same night. I don't necessarily think that is going to be the case right off the bat. But that is something that is definitely being reviewed, particularly on the micro-mobility pieces. And how do we become more like a city? Like if I went to Detroit for a concert recently a few weeks ago, and, I was staying somewhere, that probably in Grand Rapids, I wouldn't have walked that distance to get there, but it was a different identity and culture of like, you're going to park here and you're going to walk this 10 minutes and it's really not that far. So I think some of it is also like what I would call behavioral economics of us getting used to how do we become a city that is more walkable and more supportive? How do we get more used to using things like our, the covered walkways that we have that can take you from, DeVos Place to the JW all the way to the Van Andel Arena? Because I think there are just some individuals who might not be as familiar with those spaces. So I could see just more investment in that. So I don't, what the specific plan is and how that's being worked on, I don't have, but that is absolutely part of the planning process that when we go along and having a major expansion like that here in the city.
You're thinking about parking.
Yes.
From Reddit, Commissioner Womack is hosting a series on the poor police performance at Wealthy Theater. Will you be joining him for any of these sessions? I know
once today, because my husband, who knows everything that's going on a lot of times in the city, and works on a lot of criminal justice reform pieces, is going. I have another event tonight, so I won't be there. I haven't been asked to go to any other events, and I think, that's sort of the way that I try to approach things, because I want to respect when another colleague, whether it is at the city or the county level, they typically ask you to join different things. And so, I'll be waiting to hear different things. And, I know a lot of times Commissioner Womack comes to our meetings as well. I haven't talked to him since the mistrial, but I know that he's very actively engaged. And, glad that we have, active, engaged county commissioners that are here in our city as well.
Yeah. I was reading on Wood TV8, preparing for this show today, that this episode or the series starts tonight, and I don't believe the other 3 dates have been set. So something to look out for.
Sure.
This question comes from Nate for the commissioner. Nate says, I live up on Belknap Hill, and during the 4th of July, it is like a war zone with fireworks and smoke. I get the impression that there is no enforcement at all of the GR ordinances. Do they only respond to emergencies, or is there actual street enforcement of ordinances?
So this is related to fireworks, is how I'm reading it. So on the 4th of July, as you noted, the legal dates of the fireworks discharge, there are certain dates where individuals and times where people are able to do that. So during those times, there's not going to be enforcement. I don't know if that's the question, but I do want to state that. So if it is, and that's state legislation. So to be able to put those out at those different times. I think like for Memorial Day, it was like the Saturday and Sunday versus Monday night, because that was like technically a school night, if you will. So if you see something, I would say if it's something outside of the regular times, then definitely call the non-emergency line for enforcement. I know individuals who have done that because they've called me on those days when it's not those legal days for the discharge. So I would say that yes, we do have enforcement that we're following. If it is a day where there is a lot of calls coming in, it is going to be what they call a lower priority call. I will absolutely say that.
Yeah. And if you missed those dates earlier in the episode, I got them off the city's website, so they're there. This question comes from Amanda. Does the city have a policy about AI being used or implemented ethically for its employees or partners?
Yeah, this is a great question, and I feel like AI has been all on my LinkedIn page lately, different organizations and communities. And so this is an emerging topic. I wouldn't say emerging, but particularly our legal department. I also know like other departments that are very working closely with direct city services and interactions. Like how do we reduce wait times for individuals? Because I think that is something that we always are concerned about, is having good city service. So we don't have like an updated policy as it relates to the use of AI that I'm aware of, but I know it is an emerging issue that our city attorney, our deputy city manager, and other leaders are continuing to focus on. Like many organizations, we have our Microsoft suite and embedding things like the Copilot, which is being used a lot. And obviously people can get onto ChatGPT and, can ask you, I think today I was going to ask it, like, what should I wear today? It's not going to be that hot or cold. Like, sometimes I just test it out. And so those are things that we'll still have to make investments on, because we do know, one, I think some of my colleagues have brought up just the environmental burden that AI has, these large data centers that use like cooling water. I don't even understand all of it, but it is their environmental impacts. So I know that some of my colleagues have brought those up, and they're concerned by that, as well as what is the inherent, like I think about even just, I was talking to a business owner, like soap stations and different like infrared stations. They are reading like your melanin, and if they read too much melanin, like they don't work. And so, I just found this out. I'm like, that's why sometimes these things don't work. And so we have to understand what is the inputs to AI, because it is still other individuals. So it's something that I think we're all watching. Is it something that the commission as a whole has taken up? No, it's really in that kind of staff area for now.
Okay. Question from Daniel. I've seen a lot of investment into large projects in the city, as well as tons of construction going on in the roads, how are rising construction and material costs going to affect the timelines and expenses for these? If it's going to cost way more, is there a way to halt projects before they get started? I'm thinking specifically about the soccer stadium.
Yeah. So the city as a whole, since that is not one of our construction projects, I can't speak to, what are the total costs, but I'm guessing, as the caller has said, yes, if the longer a construction project goes, the more expensive it will be. Typically labor and materials. And then also you factor in this year different tariffs and pieces. And I know steel and tariffs like Brazil, and I can't remember, I think Japan, those are two larger countries that are focused on steel production. And so a lot of times what businesses will do is they'll buy that commodity up front, knowing that they're probably going to spend this much, and say, I'm going to lock that price in. Sometimes people do that, right, for their own home heating and different things like that they might do. And so I can't speak about the soccer stadium because that project, from my understanding, is going to go forward, and if it costs more, I think there's probably other people who are deciding that, but that won't be the decision of the city of Grand Rapids. I think our other construction projects, some of the things that we try to do is, do them like this project that we have with Canal Park and the construction. It is like purchasing some of the pieces up front that we know we're going to spend on as a whole as a city. And so you have that purchasing power of a city to be able to access things like that.
So just anticipating that costs might go up
Yeah, absolutely.
A question from a YouTube viewer. What about those that will be displaced due to the arrival of the Amway Soccer Stadium in the First Ward?
Yeah, I'm not sure that my understanding is that there's not any housing that is being displaced, so that is which I know they started last week, the deconstruction of the big boy, which, I know people were, it's like one of the last big boys, I don't even know the number of it. But there are not any housing displacement pieces, from my understanding, because it's right there by the YWCA. So it was those lots and then the big boy. I think that we'll continue to look at, again, the parking flow. You've got Grand Valley, and so they are, I think at the last planning commission meeting, there was discussion about the plan for a walkway between the soccer stadium and I think the Grand Valley parking lot. So looking at ways to get people kind of safely across, because that can be a very busy area too, because people are coming right off the freeway.
Okay. And it looks like we have one more question from Georgia. What does it mean to be a top 2% fire department?
Yeah.
Is this just another meaningless top 10 celebration where GR talks about how great they are while a housing and wealth disparity problem grows?
Well, I sense a lot of angst in this question, I have to say, Georgia. And I get it. Like, we are celebrating 175 years of the city, and we also have to recognize whose land this was before the city was incorporated. And so I think the reality of living in our modern society is like this tension between like the things we want to see and who is being left behind. No doubt about it. I hear from individuals, in my own family who are, unsure about their own housing, are unsure about, the cost of school. And so I sense that. I think for the fire department, what we're really trying to do here is how can we reduce the loss of life and property? And that's a value add to individuals, certainly your loss of your life, but also to businesses, and just knowing that the fire department can respond in a certain way. The other thing that we've been focused on with our police department is getting individuals that EMT training, so that they can also serve in that like a medical emergency capacity, because a lot of times they might be a first to respond on something even before like the private ambulance company or the police department. So I know that Chief Brown has been really focused on, what are those credentialing pieces and what are all of the aspects that a public safety department can focus on.
I will say, too, while I was preparing these notes for today, I did learn that because we are rated in the top 2% of fire departments, our insurance is lower. So our fire safety insurance, whatever that would be. So we have lower premiums for that?
Yeah, they take that into account. I know, the state of Michigan, we have higher insurance rates for vehicles because I think we have a lot of wildlife and things like that. But yes, it's definitely something of value add to the city, and I think to just say as a city versus a township or a different type of incorporation, that we are providing these services to you.
Great. Well, that is about all the time that we have today. So thank you to our guest, Commissioner Ysasi, for coming in and sharing your insight. It's always a great time having you on the show. And thank you to all of you at home for tuning in and sending in your questions. Don't forget that you can always watch reruns or rebroadcasts throughout the month of June on cable GRTV's Channel 25 or over on the GRTV YouTube page. See you next month, Grand Rapids.
The Grand Rapids Community Media Center is committed to creating a diverse and inclusive environment for all community members. It is a place where community voices are heard, valued, and lifted through media. We seek to provide area residents with a platform to participate in free speech, be engaged with the community, and share their diverse voices. As a multimedia platform organization, we provide and support a variety of community resources, including our radio station, WYCE 88.1 FM, our TV station, GRTV, our hyper-local news program, the Rapidian, web services, and our historic theater, Wealthy Theater.
WYCE is West Michigan's only community radio station that is listener-supported and volunteer-powered. WYCE uses local voices to help listeners discover and celebrate different services, cultures, and events. What I really like about programming music in WYCE is I get to not only interact with listeners and local musicians, but I get to put together a musical collage every week and give it away to the universe. As a volunteer programmer, you get the training on how to use equipment, how to access music from the library, and how to put together a great show that showcases local and national artists and still has your creativity included.
The Web Services Department helps West Michigan nonprofits connect, learn, create, and share through locally built and accessible websites. We help nonprofits strengthen their online presence by developing one-of-a-kind websites tailored to their specific needs. The Web Services team can take care of all the technical needs of getting a new site up and running, including website hosting, domain name registration, theme development, and page layout. Websites are built with accessibility and responsiveness in mind, making sure our projects are available on any screen and accessible to people of all abilities. We are passionate about helping organizations in the nonprofit sector effectively communicate their stories online, promoting equity and media access with our affordable services.
Wealthy Theater is a historic theater on the southeast side of Grand Rapids. It was built in 1911, and today it stands as a performing arts center, historic cinema, and community venue. We provide a space for community connection, where community members can get together, enjoy different shows and different events. From concerts to comedy, musicals, theater, film screenings, you name it. Anybody from the community can sign up to be a member and rent one of our spaces to host their event. We have a staff here at the theater that helps make all the events here happen, as well as a great community of volunteers. The goal is to bring the community together, bring audiences together, artists together, create experiences where those two can connect. Whether you're an audience member who wants to come see a show or you're somebody who wants to put on a show, Wealthy Theater is a space for you.
The Rapidian is a hyper-local news source powered by, for, and of the people of Grand Rapids, Michigan. We launched in 2009 using funds from local organizations and generous donors, and this community-driven platform empowers residents to share their stories, post articles, and keep track of local events and issues. By emphasizing citizen journalism, the Rapidian provides a unique grassroots perspective and a vital news service for the residents of Grand Rapids. In 2023, we are relaunching the Rapidian with the Grand Rapids Documenters program, where we train, and pay local citizens to cover public meetings, empowering residents with the tools and resources to strengthen the news media landscape in Grand Rapids and become more civically engaged.
GRTV airs public access television programming made by and for the Grand Rapids community, amplifying their voices to support a diverse and vibrant democracy. We provide the tools, training, and broadcast platform for free speech. Community members can take classes on video and production features, borrow professional equipment, editing software, and use of our studio facilities to create their own content. We help community members connect, learn, create, and share.